everybody, I'm Tara from Crooked Row, and today we were going to have a pruning video, but we got hit with another torrential rainstorm, so our farm is definitely flooding, so bringing you a pruning video was not good today. So instead I wanted to focus, I've been doing this video because it's pollinators, and I don't know why I've been putting it off because it's so important to actually do it right now, because pollinators are what we need to draw in for the garden, but we also need to plant them now. And so I wanted to go through my top 10 best perennial pollinators that I actually have experience with, and almost all of them are growing currently in the garden. So let's go ahead and get to the list. So first on my list is going to be Echinacea. Echinacea is, and there are different types of Echinacea, but what we currently have planted here is Echinacea purpurea. I suppose that's right. And we have Powwow Wildberry, and the price is white, planted here, and they really draw in the pollinators. They are very good. They're very drought tolerant. They are 2 feet tall, and ours they haven't gotten super duper wide. They've grown a little bit, but they kind of stay in their clumps, I feel. And they are good zones 3 through 9. So most of the United States can plant the Echinacea, which is great. And so with it also being a drought tolerant plant, you can pretty much plant them in places in the garden where you can't get water to it a lot. Now, there is a caveat to that. All perennial plants, when they're first planted, need water, even the ones that don't need water, like Russian sage. Which Russian sage is not one of these that I'm talking about today. I'm just saying that Russian sage is usually touted as not needing water, but when you first transplant something that first year, it's at least going to need a little bit of water every now and again, because that root system has to develop. Once it does, then your drought tolerant plants are usually okay. So Echinacea is one of those plants, though. I think it is a beautiful perennial to plant. So next on the list is butterfly weed. Butterfly weed is 2 to 3 feet tall and wide, and it is zones 3 through 11. Now, with it being zones 3 through 11, that essentially covers all of the United States. There might be some, like, I don't think three might be the top for, of coldness for it, but butterfly weed, I was pleasantly surprised last year. I started from seed some butterfly weed. It grew like it was a weed, a butterfly weed. And what is really neat is I don't typically go for like orange flowers and orange plants, and this was like a very vibrant orange, and it's sort of in the middle of a bunch of very colorful flowers. It was actually the most perfect flash of color in that little flower bed right next to the garden. It's unusual for me. I tend to stick with like pinks and whites and purples, but this was just this pop, and it really brought in the pollinators. The pollinators loved it, and I mean, there's a reason why it's called butterfly weed. It did pull in a lot of butterflies, so I definitely recommend planting butterfly weed. And if you don't want to go and spend, you know, at the low end, $20 for one plant, this is a plant that is way too easily startable by seed, and I winter sowed it. So you could even winter sow it and that would be fine as well. So next on the list is Veronica. So Veronica is actually one of my favorite perennials. It's varied is why I like it. So I first got my start with white wands, and white wands are just beautiful, especially when you plant kind of a bunch of them together. And then I branched out from that, and I got, I think it's called Royal Candles, and it has beautiful like purple spikes, and they draw in so many pollinators. I've never seen a flower perennial plant that pulled in that many pollinators. I mean, I was kind of surprised. it wasn't as varied with pollinators. It seemed to more pull in like sweat bees, and I think there was some bees on it. Now, honeybees were on it. Some bumbles get on it, but not very many. So it really is sort of an exclusive like sweat bee, honeybee pollinator that I have seen. But they pulled in tons. So Veronica is 1 to 4 feet tall, depending on the variety that you get. And it is hardy from zones 3 through 8. It does really well at kind of getting bigger clumps, and then you can break them up. And I mean, they just kind of keep growing, and you can kind of grow your whole little garden of Veronica. And I love that. Next on the list is elderberry. So I actually have some elderberry videos already out about planting, about using them for cash crops and things like that. Elderberry is probably the easiest thing I've ever grown. It takes a little time because like the first year you plant just like a stick that's like this big, and it might have like a shoot or two that comes off of it, not tons of growth. And then the second year you probably have growth that's like knee high. And then, but by the third year, you're getting a more substantial plant. By the fourth year, ours was 15 feet high last year. So it had huge elderflowers on it. I mean, they were as big as plates. And the scent, like we have 2 Adams and Johns planted right next to the greenhouse. And on our way to the greenhouse, that smell is so intoxicating. It is, the flowers are like just this beautiful, lacy, I don't know. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love it. And so, as I already said, they can grow about 15 feet high and about 5 feet wide. So that they're a big plant, but they are hardy from zones 4A to 10B. So you can grow them in most places. And if you're looking for a good hedge, now they won't be an evergreen, so you won't have the hedge in the winter time, but if you're looking for a good, really well-growing hedge, elderberry is it. And then you get the bonus of elderberries too. So great perennial to grow. It draws in just about everything, even hummingbirds. I'm not sure how hummingbirds nip it, but they do. I saw hummingbirds last year. They definitely draw in butterflies and bees. Bumblebees love them. The big fat bumbles, like they're all over it. Actually, there's so many pollinators on it, especially early in the morning, like when I go to water everything that's in the greenhouse. There's like a like that hum when you go past them because there's so many pollinators on it. So they definitely draw in the pollinators. I highly suggest elderberries. The next one is one that is not as typical, and that is Marshmallow Plant. Now we have actually had Marshmallow Plant in our garden for about 8 years, and it is, I originally planted it as a part of like a medicinal garden. There's that mucilage, I think it's called, that, or that could be like a fiber thing that I'm thinking of. Whatever it is. There is something in it that kind of helps with like mucus and stuff in the lungs. So that's why I originally planted it. But then once it got to be a great big plant, I was so happy that I had planted that because so it does have these beautiful little, I feel like they're dainty flowers, which I pick off and dry so that we can have it for tea throughout the winter. But the hummingbirds love it, the butterflies love it. I see a lot of moths on it. The bumblebees do a little. They're not huge bumblebee or bee, actually not tons of bees, period, nip that one, but a lot of other pollinators do. So I highly suggest planting that. And it's kind of a carefree plant for us anyway. I mean, it just sort of thrives on its own. I don't water it. I don't fertilize it. It's very neglected and it does really well. And it's like taller than I am. So it's like 6 feet tall. But actually, let me see what the actual dimensions. Yeah. 4 feet tall. Ours are taller than that because I'm 5'7", so they go up over my head. And so ours just loves its life, loves where it's at. So, and it is in zones 3 to 9. And I also started that from seed. You can't get that seed everywhere. So I believe I got that seed from rareseeds.com, which is Baker Creek. So it's a great thing to plant. The next is Blackeyed Susans. Now I know that Blackeyed Susans are like the country go-to. I think everybody has Blackeyed Susans, but they actually are not just, you know, a country go-to. They not only pull in pollinators, but they have medicinal properties too. So I highly suggest those. The pollinators do love those. The little black button or the little eye in the flower, they will kind of swarm all over those and nip those like crazy. So Blackeyed Susans are 24 to 36 inches tall and wide. They're that tall and wide. And they are good for zones 3 through 10. I mean, if you're outside of those zones and you're having success, let me know. And next we have Clary Sage. Now, I grow a lot of herbs and things, but I had heard that Clary Sage was different. So I got 2 different types of Clary Sage. One of them is called Pink Sunday, and I can't remember the other kind that we had planted. One just like died right away, and I actually got that from a nursery. Well, not right away. It died in the fall, right, Elijah? It died in the fall. The Pink Sunday, I believe it's called, it is thriving right now. You can tell it's going to be a huge plant. It does draw in pollinators. It is visited by essentially every bug you can imagine, but I love the pink flowers on it. It's just such a pretty plant, and it is hardy to zone 5. So no colder or else it won't survive it. And I actually think that's why the one that we planted, so my Pink Sundays are kind of blocked by the greenhouse, whereas the one that we had planted, it was like called Blue Heaven or something, and it is more in direct of the weather. Not indirect, it is directly in the weather. And so I just think that it got much colder than the Pink Sundays did. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that Clary Sage variety. I just think that it was just exposed more. So definitely draws in pollinators, definitely worth planting, and it's not a super fussy plant. Another one is the butterfly bush, and as it states, it draws in butterflies, especially monarch butterflies, and it has these beautiful, like almost like cone-shaped flowers that kind of, well, actually they're little tiny flowers, but they're all in a cone, and sometimes they kind of droop a little. It's very just like fairy tale garden pretty. I love butterfly bushes. We don't have any here right now, but in our old house I had one. I loved them. They definitely draw in butterflies. Bees love them. You do have to be careful if you're looking for something that's not going to be ruined by size. The standard butterfly bushes can get like 15 feet tall, and you'll want to like look into how you prune them and things like that, because they have I think it's Proven Winners has one called a pugster, and it's like 2 or 3 feet high, 2 or 3 feet wide. Those kind of, you know, are more of a rounded shape. But if you're looking for something that's almost like hedge-like, or you just want something to kind of be the center, or just plant like right in the center of your garden that draws in pollinators, the butterfly bush is your go-to. And it is zones 5 through 10. So most of the country, most of the United States can plant this. We also have planted Yaro. Yaro is a great plant that brings in pollinators. It's beautiful too. I mean, it has these beautiful little flowers. Right now, the one I have is yellow. That's another plant, and it's right next to the bright orange butterfly weed. I usually don't plant yellow flowers either, but it is such a bright, like refreshing plant to see. It really allows, like, it almost does the perfect contrast in that little flower garden I have at the end of the garden. And it also has medicinal properties. And I mean, don't listen to me, listen to a doctor. I am not very studied on this, but I'm just telling you, passing along things that I know. And I know that people have in the past used them to almost like bandages to kind of clot up their wounds and things. So, and yarrow is good for other things, but we also use it as a pollen, no, not a pollen, a pollinator attractor. And the last one, I saved this for last on purpose because it is Agastache, however you pronounce that. And it's also called hyssop, Mexican hyssop, anise hyssop. There's different things for it, but the one that we had last year, I've never had a plant. Maybe the only thing that rivaled it was the elderberry bush. It drew in so many pollinators. And what's funny is, like, I would go and water around the plant, and typically when you do that, like, the pollinators are like, they're gone. You know, they don't want to get hit with water. But they didn't. I mean, they were so drawn to that. And actually, this sort of made me sad at the end of the season. Some of the butterflies, like, they just wouldn't move from it, and some of them froze to the spikes. But it's also a beautiful plant. It's a beautiful plant. It drew in everything. I mean, it even drew in like sweat bees to great big bumblebees to butterflies to moths to hummingbirds to everything. So if you want to just like a very big attractor, I would say definitely Agastache, however you say that. So there are, well, actually, and that is 2 to 4 feet tall, 1 foot wide, and it's in zones 3 to 10, but some varieties, check your varieties, because some of it is only 5 to 9, but I highly suggest that for sure to plant. I think that it's so important that we draw in the pollinators, because they actually are what help us to make seeds. And I've had videos on that and drawing in pollinators and why it's so important. So look that video up if you can, if you don't understand what the whole pollinator thing is. But pollinators are so important, and we definitely want to like save the bees and all that stuff. So if you've ever seen the bee movie, you know how important bees are. Right? So that's all for today. I just wanted to drop a quick video since we can't get out into the garden and show you how to prune today. I just thought I'd help you get ready. Don't forget that now is the time to be buying your perennials, because this is the time that we plant. It's springtime. Check your tags, and let's have the best gardens ever this year. And remember, if we can draw in pollinators, anybody can. Thanks. Bye.